In today's video, we're discussing all the latest NHL rumors, mainly around the Calgary Flames, the Buffalo Sabres, as well as the Washington Capitals and the Colorado Avalanche. Plus, we have some updates on the Minnesota Wild GM search, as well as Justin Williams' playing future. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover in today's video, so let's jump right in. I want to get started with the Calgary Flames. Now, we've talked a lot about the Flames lately and the fact that they're likely kind of in a position where they need to make a trade here, and likely trading from the blue line as well as the forward group are both options, and maybe even both might be things that are on the table here for the Flames. They find themselves in a little bit of a salary cap crunch, needing to sign RFA forward Matthew Tkachuk, who's likely looking for a substantial raise, and they certainly have a tight cap situation to get that done. Now, of course, we talked before about them trading TJ Brodie and making some room on the blue line, and that very well might be kind of put on hold here, as they've recently gotten word about defenseman Juuso Valimaki, who's going to be out of the lineup for probably a significant amount of time with a serious injury and will miss the beginning of the season. So that's certainly going to change things on the blue line. If they were going to trade Brodie, Valimaki was likely going to be in a top 6 regular spot, certainly with an increased role, and obviously where he's going to miss the first number of months now, that's certainly going to change things a lot for the Flames on that blue line. So I would more than likely think that Brodie's likely not going to be traded. If anything, they might try to require some extra depth on the blue line instead. And obviously we talked about the other options they had, and that was trading forward Michael Frolik, which is very well still a strong possibility. I know based on comments from his agent even last year, I don't think they were entirely thrilled around what he was getting for ice time and his role, things like that. So it kind of led to the impression that Frolik was kind of looking for a fresh start anyhow. So you combine that with the fact that they're facing a cap crunch, and now it's a serious injury on the blue line, just increases the odds of him being traded that much more likely and less likely to see a guy on the blue line be moved out. Obviously it puts them in a really awkward position. They need to do something around the cap, get Tkachuk signed, and Frolik is the most logical target to go. But I guess we'll see what happens here. But this certainly is a game changer for the Flames. And the young defenseman Valimaki, who was expected to take on an increased role, now is going to miss a significant period of time. So we'll see how the Flames proceed here, but it's certainly going to make a big change in what they were planning to do before the season starts. I also wanted to quickly jump over and take a quick look at the Rasmus Ristolainen situation, as we discussed a few days ago in a video, talking about the fact that it looked like he wants out of Buffalo based on comments that he's recently made to a media outlet, indicating that he's going to be showing up to somebody's training camp in September, and that things weren't going well in Buffalo. He wasn't quite happy. He wasn't able to help the team win, etc., etc. And all things kind of pointed to the fact that he had requested a trade from the Sabres. He's a player that's been talked about a lot during this offseason, and really I want to take a look at some potential landing spots. And really, wouldn't you think the Winnipeg Jets would be the perfect spot for Ristolainen? They're a team that's really had a mass exodus of blue liners, especially on that right side. He signed for 3 more years. They had the cap certainty to know what he's going to be paid over that period of time, and I realized that he did have a really tough year last year. The plus-minus category was really bad. It's something he struggled with his whole career so far. So certainly room for improvement, but obviously that plays a part of a team game as well as an individual game when you look at that stat, which is why a lot of people don't put a lot of emphasis on it. But when it really sticks out as bad as his was, that part of that has to do with his own game as well. But considering the Winnipeg Jets are in an awkward spot where they need help on the blue line, they might need to make a trade out of the forward group depending on what they work out for contracts for guys like Laine and Kyle Connor. They do have what appears to be sufficient cap space to get them signed depending on what the contracts turn out to be. But they could certainly use some help on the blue line and might want some more flexibility. Obviously, trading a guy like a Matthew Perreault has been discussed. Obviously, they've heard rumors about Nick Ehlers before. Not really sure what the required package would be to land Ristolainen, but I would think that he would be an excellent fit in Winnipeg, and given their situation to maybe move out of forward, I think that the Sabres and Jets really should be having conversations. So I don't have any links to suggest they've been talking, or there's no rumors that the Jets are going after him. I just wanted to look at some landing spots, and really I think Winnipeg would be a great landing spot for Ristolainen should they go ahead and move him. So let me know what you think if the Winnipeg Jets should pursue that, and what would be a good package deal for them to give up to acquire their right shot defenseman. Now I want to take a quick look at some potential offer sheets as well. Will we actually see one this year? I know we've talked a lot about the fact that we likely won't, and kind of the reason we're in that RFA stalemate right now is that there's really not a lot of incentive for the players or the teams to kind of start really buckling down in negotiations to get something done, because there's not really pressure on either side. We're still a little ways from training camp, still a little ways from the season starting, and they do have ample time to get deals done. Now, it's been reported through Adrian Dater of Colorado Hockey Now. I'll show you what he had here on Twitter the other day, indicating that he feels that we likely are in a prime situation to see another offer sheet, but it's likely going to be around the time that training camps open and shortly before the NHL season starts. Obviously, right now, teams can go over the salary cap by 10%. Obviously, teams know that, players know that, and obviously, teams are likely going to have time to match and make other adjustments to their roster should they be faced with an offer sheet for their restricted free agents that they're trying to sign. So it gives teams plenty of time to adjust their lineups, whereas if it happens at the last minute shortly before the season starts, they really won't have a lot of time to become cap compliant, so they'd either be forced to not match the offer sheet or to make another trade quickly, and which increases the likelihood of them being hurt in some capacity. The likelihood of an offer sheet being successful would be that much higher as we approach the season. So he feels that we likely could see one. Now, where he focuses mainly on the Avalanche, he also went on to say that the Rantanen situation, at this point, there's not to believe there really be much of anything going on. There was also an article recently on NHL.com interviewing GM Joe Sakic, and he indicated that, at this point, Rantanen's in a situation with a lot of the other RFAs. Obviously, things are kind of slow going. They've discussed longer-term deals, shorter-term deals. They'd like to get them locked up longer-term, but they certainly are open to doing a shorter-term deal here as well. But other sources have indicated that they don't have any reason to think that GM Joe Sakic and Rantanen's agent have really had any talks at all since early on in free agency. I think it was around the time of draft or early July. So there really isn't a whole lot of negotiating, a whole lot of talking going on. I know when you hear GMs talk, there seems to be letting on that there is, but a lot of other sources are indicating that there really isn't, and that really things are quite quiet. Obviously, teams want to see somebody going to go first here and kind of set the market, and with nobody really taking that step forward to get that done, there's not as many comparables to use. We're kind of at a stalemate here, so I guess we'll see. Let me know what you think. Is Adrian Dater kind of accurate here that there likely could be another offer sheet, but if there is, it likely will happen right around the time the season's starting with any players that are not yet signed, so the teams don't have a lot of time to counter and might have to make a rash move and let the offer sheet be successful and take the draft picks as compensation. Now, just a quick update here in the Minnesota Wild general manager search. Obviously, they'd already interviewed a few guys we discussed before, including Ron Hextall and Peter Chiarelli. We've heard other names like Tom Fitzgerald, Scott Mellanby, just to name a few others that are certainly out there. A couple of guys have been vetoed to have talks with them as well. The Minnesota Wild did try to talk to Chris Drury as well as Bill Zito of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they were actually denied permission to speak with them. So obviously their search continues, but one guy you can take out of the mix was Carolina Hurricanes GM Don Waddell, who we had reported before was working without a contract and actually was interviewed for the position. He has a previous relationship with owner Craig Leopold, and obviously they're quite familiar with each other, so they did talk, and given the fact that Waddell wasn't anything close to being guaranteed a position as of yet, they wanted to go through their process of everything. He went back, spoke to Tom Dundon, the owner of the Hurricanes, and they worked out a new 3-year contract. Even though Dundon didn't seem to appear fond of having a lot of his hockey operation people under contract, he obviously succumbed to that and went ahead just to make everybody more comfortable, he said. But obviously Waddell will be staying in Carolina longer term, and their search in Minnesota continues. Now, staying with Carolina here momentarily, it's also been reported through GM Don Waddell that Captain Justin Williams has not decided as of yet if he's going to play next season or not. Now, they do have a little bit of salary cap space to sign him should he decide he wants to play, but considering how deep we are now into the offseason, they don't yet have a decision. It certainly makes it a little bit hard to plan ahead. Obviously, he played a big role for them. He's a great veteran, good leader, provided a pretty decent offensive output last year as well. So they don't really know yet. He is not informed in one way or another if he's going to be playing next year. So I guess we will stay tuned to see if the Hurricanes will have their captain in the lineup or not for opening night. Now, lastly here, I want to touch on the Washington Capitals. As we talked about previously, Braden Holtby, goaltender of the Capitals, is entering the final year of his contract. The Capitals are in a situation here where they're going to be faced with him wanting a mega raise based on the current goaltender market around the NHL. They have to be concerned about the Seattle expansion draft coming up in the not too distant future. And they also have young prospect goaltender Ilya Samsonov who is expected to be a great prospect to be the potential goaltender of the future. It's somebody who they're not going to want to lose to the expansion draft. So obviously with Braden Holtby making around $6 million right now, and looking at the contracts that we just recently seen for Sergei Bobrovsky and Andrei Vasilevsky. Of course, you get Carey Price from a little while back, who also signed a mega deal. So we got three goaltenders, in and around the $10 million mark now, certainly setting the tone for some of the top goalies around the league. And the Capitals are in a situation where they don't have tons of cap space to really handle a mega raise for Holtby while accommodating other players, and at the same time, instead keeping in mind the expansion draft. So the reports that I was reading here from NBC indicate that they don't feel that the Capitals would likely want to give him too big of a raise, and at the same time, they likely don't want to give him a no-move clause, which kind of would force them to protect him during the expansion draft and expose youngster Ilya Samsonov to the Seattle expansion franchise, which obviously I would think that they would more likely would take him, but it also depends on who else is available, which we don't really know yet. But there's, generally speaking, most of the top goaltenders are protected, so they're likely grabbing one or two young solid goaltenders if they can would certainly be appealing, I would think. So what should the Washington Capitals do? Should they consider trading Braden Holtby? Do they keep him as their own rental for the season? But as of right now, there doesn't appear to be a lot going on when it comes to contract extensions. If you look at his stats compared to the other guys, especially Bobrovsky, who just signed for $10 million with the Panthers, he's kind of in that same ballpark. He's a Stanley Cup winner as well. He's had more playoff success, and to me, he could probably command just as much or more money, and it kind of puts the Capitals in an awkward spot. But obviously, trading him now is likely not a great idea. They want to salvage this season. He would be a big part of that. Samsonov, at this point at least, is not ready to take over that job as a starter. So it certainly makes it an interesting situation for the Capitals. Also, seeing a top goaltender like him be traded near the deadline as like a trade deadline deal is also not real common as well. So will the Capitals hold on to Holtby as their own rental this year and risk losing him next year if they can't cough up the big bucks to keep him? This report indicates that they feel that Holtby likely would take a little bit of a discount because he would prefer to stay with the Capitals, but obviously not too deep of a discount if it's going to be anywhere close to that $10 million mark that he might be able to command as a free agent. So in my opinion, I think there's a pretty good chance he goes to market next summer and could be one of the top free agents on the market next year, like we saw by Bobrovsky this past season. Well, that is all your latest NHL rumors here for today. Of course, as always, want to know your thoughts, your opinions down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Certainly some interesting situations. Are we going to see some offer sheets closer to training camp and the time the season's going to start? Are the Capitals going to hang on to Braden Holtby? Will Justin Williams return for maybe for one more season with the Hurricanes? Let me know your thoughts and we'll continue the conversation down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.